everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to the winter campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. After the vanishing of Alana Harper last week, our investigators didn't pick up any experience, and Nathaniel picked up a mental trauma to go with his physical. Full disclosure, if Nathaniel picks up another trauma from this scenario, I'm going to invoke my house rule on trauma and end the campaign. I may invoke the house rule even if Akachi picks up another trauma, but we'll see about that. This campaign isn't going well at all, and I'm remembering why this is probably my least favorite campaign in the game. But I'll have more on that during the campaign outro, whenever that may be. I might also do a ranking video on the campaigns in the future, but that'll come later, and may or may not include the Feast of Hemlock Vale, which is the newest campaign, depending on when I do it. Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. The ranking video, that is. Not the Feast of Hemlock Vale. You might see that a little bit later, but I'll want to play that at least once just to see how everything lays out. But first up, after that ramble, we're into the third scenario of this campaign, In Too Deep. First up, let's go ahead and set the scene.
Scenario 3, In Too Deep. The sea rises steadily as you make your way along the coast toward the town of Innsmouth. The sun and moon align over the distant horizon, threatening a grim, uncertain future. You remember the layout of the town and several strange faces you met during your first few days there, but nothing that transpired between them and waking up in that waterlogged pit. Agent Harper has been trying to fill you in, but with so many gaps in your memory, each explanation only perplexes you further. Ever since you came to Innsmouth, things have only gotten worse. It began with the locals. Each day, they got rowdier and more hostile, especially to outsiders like you and me. Do you remember how nauseating some of them looked? Slimy, grayish skin? Wide lips, bulging eyes, that sort of thing? You nod. Now that you remembered, you almost wish you hadn't. It wasn't just the way they looked either. Their hoarse voices croaked syllables barely resembling human speech, and they reeked of rotting fish. They're the ones who have been stirring up trouble recently, and that's not all. There are other creatures skulking around Innsmouth of late. I'm sure you've seen them too. She shudders. There's some kind of connection between the esoteric Order of Dagon and those things. Not sure what yet, but we'll get to the bottom of it if... Agent Harper's voice trails off as she climbs to the top of the headland. Whatever has her staring agape can't be good. You reach the top, haul yourself over the ridge, and see the same devastation she does. Innsmouth has been invaded. The same creatures you encountered in that sacrificial pit prowl the streets. Foul things from the depths of the sea, or perhaps beyond. They patrol the alleys and intersections, searching for something, hunting. Makeshift barricades block the various pathways through the town as water from the Manaxet River spills out onto the streets. No, this can't be, Agent Harper intones. A moment of silent gloom hangs between you. It is clear that Innsmouth is no longer safe. You inform Agent Harper that Agent Dawson left his vehicle near hers, at the abandoned railway station on the western edge of Innsmouth. She nods, understanding. Right. We have to get to the other side of town, and fast. The sky above you is bathed in hues of violent crimson. With any luck, no more of that color will be spilled today. Proceed to set up.
We'll see if Lady Luck is riding on our side in terms of not spilling any more of that crimson. Next, let's remind everyone what the tarot reading was. On the good side, we left the Sun 19. So each investigator can take 2 additional actions during their first turn. On the bad side, we flipped Death 13. So each investigator has -1 health. With his physical trauma, that leaves Nathaniel still as a somewhat serviceable 7-5. But that's with his physical trauma. Nathaniel's still a 7-5. With her physical trauma, however, Akachi will drop down to a 4-8, so we'll need to be very careful with that. And we've seen enemies that can do 2 damage in one shot, so they'd be running through Akachi's health and nothing flat, most likely. Next, let's take a look at opening hands. Nathaniel will once again be our lead investigator, and he'll start off with 2 copies of Vicious Blow. 1 combat on commit, and if this skill test is successful during an attack, that attack deals +1 damage. I wouldn't mind seeing 1 Vicious Blow in my hand. Having both is probably less than ideal, but we'll work with it. Next up, we've got Boxing Gloves, which is a card I'm very happy to see in his opening hand. Randall Cho would amount to the same thing, but that's not relevant right now. We get +1 combat while fighting, and as a reaction after we defeat an enemy, exhaust Boxing Gloves to search the top 6 cards of your deck for a spirit event and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck, takes up both hand slots. Next up, we've got Counterpunch. Fast, play after an enemy attacks you, even if the attack was cancelled. Fight targeting the attacked enemy. 0 cost to play, combat, agility on commit. Boxing Gloves had a combat on commit as well, but I will almost certainly be playing that among Nathaniel's first actions. And we have Evidence. Fast, play after we defeat an enemy. Discover 1 clue at your location. 1 cost to play, 2 lore on commit. Akachi likewise has a double to start in her hand to start. She's got 2 copies of Clairvoyance. Uses 3, aka 4 charges because of Akachi's special ability. Action, spend a charge to investigate, using will instead of lore. If you succeed, discover 1 additional clue at this location. But if you pull a good symbol, as an elder sign, +1 or a 0, take 1 horror. Then we've got a Storm of Spirits, 3 cost to play, will, combat on commit. Fight using will instead of combat. If you succeed, deal 2 damage to each enemy at your location, and any additional damage is dealt to the attacked enemy. But if you pull a bad symbol, deal 1 damage to each investigator at your location. Next, we've got an Arcane Initiate, 1 cost to play, will on commit. Forced, after Arcane Initiate enters play, place 1 doom on her. And after fast action to exhaust Arcane Initiate, search the top 3 cards of your deck for a spell and draw it, shuffling your deck. 1 health, 2 sanity on Soak. And Ward of Protection. 1 cost to play, wild on commit. Fast, play when you draw a non-weakness treachery card. Cancel that card's revelation effect, then take 1 horror. Next up, we'll take a look at the starting act and agenda decks. Agenda 1A, Barricaded Streets. In a second, all my plans were utterly changed, for if the southward highway were blocked ahead of me, I must clearly find another egress from Innsmouth. H.P. Lovecraft, The Shadow over Innsmouth. Each suspect enemy loses aloof and cannot be parlayed with. Forced, when your turn ends, if you're at a fully flooded location, take 1 damage. Which, with our health already being imperiled, we need to be very careful about that as well. And then our act. Through the Labyrinth. Inhuman creatures patrol the streets of Innsmouth, hunting for you and more of your kind. You must make your way to the other end of town and escape, but perhaps more of your memories can be recovered if you explore the town of Innsmouth further. Fast action, spend 1 per plus 1 clues as a group. Remove 1 barrier between your location and a connecting location. Objective, get to the railroad station. If each surviving investigator has resigned, advance. So we need 3 clues to break down the barriers, but as we'll see, it's not going to be quite that simple. Last up, Nathaniel and Akachi will move over to the map, so we'll join them there. Once again, we're using the LCG token representations for our investigators. Mystic is, of course, Akachi, and Guardian is Nathaniel. They're starting down here at the Shoreward Slums. Full of lifelong inhabitants, the slums could be a good place to glean key information about the state of the town. That flips into Shroud of 2, 3 clues. Forced, after this location is revealed, randomly choose 1 set aside face-down keys and place it on this location without looking at it. So we'll grab this key to put it there. As a fast action, take 1 damage to parlay. Remove 1 barrier between this town and a connecting location. We're using these resources to indicate our barriers. So we'll get our 2 clues there. Okay, we've got our key out here. So I think we're all set to get into this scenario. I'll finish doing a little bit of setup detail, get that out of the way. That can go in the folder here. So yes, we are all set to get into this scenario. I think we'll start off with Akachi, and we'll start off in her play area. With using the LCG tokens over at the map, I'll leave the investigator card here as my same turn indicator. We'll put the LCG tokens back on the location. For action 1, and remember we have 5, Akachi will spend 4 resources to play out one of her copies of Clairvoyance. I'm only going to get 3 charges for it, because action 2 will be to spend one of those charges to investigate. Akachi's a 5 to a 2. She's up 3. She's up 3 trying to get those clues off the location. A 0 gets her both clues, but it does mean she takes a horror, because remember, because of Clairvoyance, she did pull a 0, so she will take a horror from that. Then as a fast action, we'll take control of the key here, so Akachi will find... She'll find the white key. Alright, then Nathaniel will step in and take a damage on the parlay to clear one of the barriers from the shoreward slums. I think he'll take another damage, actually, just to clear the location out. It doesn't say anything about there being a limit there. So Nathaniel will clear the barrier around the shoreward slums. And then action 3 will take us over to the map. We're also using the fancy flood tokens from, I believe those are from Orbits. That's partially flooded, and that's fully flooded. Right now the desolate coastline is partially flooded. Akachi for action 3 will move over and take a look. The desolate coastline. Orthogonal adjacency, by the way. From here, you can still see the exit of the tidal cavern where you were trapped. The opening vanishes slowly as the tide rolls in. You shudder to think how things might have turned out if you hadn't escaped. This flips into Shroud of 2, 1 clue. Card effects cannot place barriers between desolate coastline and connecting locations. We'll get the 1 clue out for that. Action 4, we'll try to investigate it even, because why not? Plus, the 3rd clue means we can break this barrier at the Innsmouth jail. So, at even. Hey, look at that, a 0. Gets us the clue, and then as a fast action, Akachi will spend 3 clues to break down this barrier to the Innsmouth jail. Then for action 5, what does she want to do? Action 5, I think she's just going to take a resource. That will do it for Akachi. Nathaniel is probably not going to be... We're probably not going to stray too far from the map here. But Nathaniel's first action for 3 resources, he's going to play out his boxing gloves because I want him to be able to defend himself, which will bring him up to a combat of 6. Action 2, he's going to move over to Akachi. Action 3, Nathaniel's going to move to the Innsmouth jail, and we'll see what's going on here. The police must have an idea of what's going on, and it may be worth talking to one of the inmates. This will flip into Shroud of 3, 2 clues. As an action, spend 3 clues to parlay. Remove 1 barrier between this location and a connecting location. And as a fast action, if you control the black key, parlay, read flashback 8 in the campaign guide, victory 1. The black key is over here at Sawbone Alley. Setup instructed us to place the black key on the hideout location. So that's the Innsmouth jail. That was action 2 to move over. Action 3, Nathaniel's going to move up to Innsmouth Square. Get some of these locations revealed. From your vantage point, you see a red bus parked in the square. Getting a ride would be a tremendous help in escaping this infested, decrepit town. Then you hear a petrifying sound emanating from the square. A thunderous, deep growl that gives you second thoughts about proceeding. That flips into Shroud of 4, 2 clues. Forced. After this location is revealed, spawn the set aside Innsmouth Shoggoth at this location exhausted. As an action parlay, move one barrier between this location and a connecting location, so it is between this location and a different connecting location. Parlay, if the investigators control 2 or more keys as a group. Parlay, read flashback 5 in the campaign guide. Victory 1. Well, that probably wasn't the brightest idea I've ever had. But, so we have to spawn the Innsmouth Shoggoth right off the bat. Three, 4, 2. Hunter, massive. Innsmouth Shoggoth gets +2 per investigator health, so it's actually got 8 health. When Innsmouth Shoggoth moves via its Hunter keyword, it ignores all barriers. Forced. After Innsmouth Shoggoth moves, remove each barrier it moved through. Victory 1, 2, and 2. Fortunately, it's exhausted. That was action. Action 1 was to play the boxing gloves. 2, 3, 4. Action 5, Nathaniel is going to say toodaloo. Moving back down to the Innsmouth jail. That will do it for Nathaniel. That'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, yeah, this is probably going to be a pretty short scenario because I spawned the Shoggoth pretty much from the word go. So the Shoggoth will wake up, we'll reset everything, and then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Each investigator will gain 1 resource and go to 3. Nathaniel will draw. Safeguard. 2 cost to play. Will on commit. Reaction after another investigator moves from your location to a connecting location, exhaust Safeguard to move to that location. Akachi will draw. Wither. 2 cost to play. Combat on commit. Action fight. Using will instead of combat. If a bad symbol is revealed during this attack, the attacked enemy gets -1 fight and -1 evade for the remainder of the turn to a minimum of 1. So we could probably use that to try to weaken this Shoggoth a little bit. Mythos phase, we put our first Doom on the agenda. Nathaniel will draw. Rising Tides. Increase the flood level of the nearest location that can have its flood level increased. If no location's flood level is increased by this effect, Rising Tides gains Surge. We can increase the flood level of the desolate coastline, so now that's fully flooded, which means Akachi does not want to be there at the end of the turn. She won't be unless this Mythos card says otherwise. Akachi draws. Undertow. If your location, if your location is flooded, Undertow gains Surge. Otherwise, put it into play in your threat area. Forced. After you move, take 2 and 2 and discard Undertow. Reaction, discard 1 card from it's a fast action, discard 1 card from your hand. Test Combat or Agility 3 to fight the pull of the tides. If you succeed, discard Undertow. Gross. Actually, there is an argument to be made to ward that. And I think I will. Akachi needs to move too badly this round, and I don't want to take a 2 and 2 tax when I'm already down on health to do it. So we're going to ward Undertow. I wouldn't mind that so much, but like I said, I need Akachi to move too badly, and I don't want to pay a 2 and 2 tax, especially since both of her tests would be even to try to get rid of that. Plus, either way, it's going to cost me a card to try to get rid of it, so I'm just going to ward it now. But that will do it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase now, and there's an argument to be made to send Nathaniel up after that Shoggoth on our terms, but the question is, do I think Nathaniel can take it out, or do I think he's going to need a couple turns for that? I think I think I'm going to let the Shoggoth make the first move to us. Question is, do I want him to stay put? It doesn't have any special prey keyword. The Shoggoth doesn't have any prey keywords. So as long as I keep Nathaniel one location away, I can send it after Nathaniel. Which... But yeah, I think I'm going to have the Shoggoth make the first move. The question is, do I want Akachi to be there as well to take 2 and 2 as well? Want to? No. Have to? Probably. So I think we're going to move to Akachi first, and we're going to move over to the map. First things first, Akachi Action 1 is moving to the Innsmouth jail. I want her out of the desolate coastline so we don't have any problems with the flooded location. She is going to most likely take 2 and 2 from the Shoggoth, but I don't think there's anything we can do about that right now. Action 2, she's going to spend another charge of clairvoyance to try to get the clues off of the Innsmouth jail. She is up 2, and since I'm using Will, I think we're going to commit... We're not going to commit anything, actually. Actually, yes, Nathaniel is going to give her a safeguard to put her up 3, because I do want to play the Arcane Initiate at some point. So Akachi is up 3. That's a 0, which means Akachi takes another horror, but it gets both clues off the location. So action 1, action 2 to investigate. Action 3, I think, will be to take a resource. That way we can spend on the parlay next turn. That will do it for Akachi. Nathaniel... Let's see, maybe move up Vicious Blow, and then Counterpunch. That's a thought, which I think we'll go with. Mostly because I don't want Akachi to take damage as well. So action 1, Nathaniel's going to move back up to the Innsmouth Square. Action 2, he's going to attack the Shoggoth and commit Vicious Blow to go up 3. Actually, he's up base 3 already. The Vicious Blow is going to put him up 4, hopefully doing 2 damage. There we go. Rune can't be good. -3. If you fail, choose a connecting location with no barriers between it and your location. Place 1 barrier between the 2 locations. Fortunately, though, Nathaniel will not fail that. So that'll put 2 damage on the Shoggoth. Then action 3, he'll do it again, right down to committing the second Vicious Blow. So once again, up 4, trying to do 2 damage. Cultist is -2. If you fail, move to the connecting location to the east, ignoring all barriers. Once again, Nathaniel will not fail that. So he'll do another 2 damage to the Innsmouth Shoggoth. So that'll put it up to 4 damage. That will do it for Nathaniel. That will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, the Shoggoth would move, except Nathaniel's already there. So it will attack, doing 2 and 2 to Nathaniel. We do need to be careful, and we actually need to hope that this attack works, because he's going to play Counterpunch. Play after an enemy attacks you, even if the attack was canceled. Fight attacking the targeting the attacked enemy. So he's at a 6-3. He's up 3, trying to do 2 damage because I'm going to activate a special ability if this passes. Flip over his card. Elder Sign. Whoa, this might actually be really good. +1. If the skill test is successful during an attack, return an event from your discard pile to your hand. Oh, nice. So he does 2 damage. Which puts the Shoggoth up to 6 health on it. So we need 2 more to kill it. What event do we want back? I think the only event we can take back is the Counterpunch, but we can't use it against the Shoggoth again because of Death 13 plus Nathaniel's physical trauma. So that will do it for the enemy phase, which means we'll reset everything here. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Both of our investigators will gain a resource and go to 4. Nathaniel will draw. Another Counterpunch, which once again we can't use. We have to take the Shoggoth out on Nathaniel's turn. Akachi draws. A Familiar Spirit. 1 cost to play. Will on commit. You have an additional arcane slot which can only be used to hold a spell. Mythos phase, Doom goes up to 2. Nathaniel draws. Inundated. Revelation, place 1 barrier between this location and each connecting location with no barriers between them. If no barriers are placed by this effect, Inundated gains Surge. Unfortunately, we can place barriers between Innsmouth Square and New Church Green and Innsmouth Jail. So now we can't get... Actually, we could get Akachi up to Nathaniel if he needs help desperately. Akachi draws. Riptide. If your location is unflooded, Riptide gains Surge. The Innsmouth Jail is unflooded, so this gains Surge, which means it will surge into... Deep One Assault. Revelation. Disengage from each Deep One enemy at your location. Each Deep One enemy at your location and each connecting location engages you. If no enemies engage you from this effect, search the encounter deck and discard pile for a Deep One enemy, spawn it engaged with you, and shuffle the encounter deck. Oh, great. And we've got our first... We've got an Emerging Deep One, which we'll take a look at in a second. That was the bottom card of the deck. We've got the Emerging Deep One, 3/2/1 Hunter. Revelation, Emerging Deep One enters play exhausted and unengaged unless its location is fully flooded. Forced, after Emerging Deep One engages you, if your location is flooded, it attacks you. Based on the card, I think the Deep One Assault overrides that clause, so it'll spawn engaged with Akachi. And since our location is not flooded, it doesn't attack. But we need to get away from that. First order of business, however, is actually Nathaniel's in the investigation phase, where we need to take that Shoggoth out right now. So, let's move over to Nathaniel and see what he's doing about that Innsmouth Shoggoth. The situation for Nathaniel here is pretty simple. If that Innsmouth Shoggoth is still alive when we get into the enemy phase, Nathaniel is going to be defeated by damage. So action 1, we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Nathaniel's up 3, trying to attack the Shoggoth. -1 puts another damage on the Shoggoth. Action 2, he'll do it again. Tentacle touched. Not a good time for that, Nathaniel. Because action 3, we need to run that back. And I'm going to commit... Ugh. This is not a time to pull the Elder thing out of the bag. Because that's a -X, where X is the number of barriers between your location and all connecting locations. That's a -6. So I've got to commit both counter punches to go up 5 in case that token comes out, and I think there are still 2 of those. No, I think there's only 1 in the bag. What did we pull out? No, we pulled a rune out, so I think there are still 2 in the bag. So we're up 5. -1. So that gets us rid of the Innsmouth Shoggoth. And then we're in a window, so that goes to the victory display. We're in the window of defeating the enemy, so we're going to be busy. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to exhaust the boxing gloves. And we're looking in the top 6 cards for a spirit event. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First card up. Interrogate, which would be a useful event, but we can't take that. Next up. Monster Slayer, which we could take. Next. Safeguard, can't take. Next up. If it bleeds, would be useful, but we can't take that. Next up. Evidence, which we would want, but we can't take that. And Glory. Fast, play after you defeat an enemy, draw 2 cards. 2 lore on commit, 1 cost to play. Our other choice is Monster Slayer. 0 cost to play, wild card on commit, fight dealing +1 damage. I think here we're going to take Glory. And then since we're still in the window of defeating an enemy, once I get this shuffled, we've still got at least 2 more cards to play. First of which will be 1 resource for the aforementioned Glory, which will let me draw 2 cards. Ding, ding, ding! Indeed, Nathaniel is victorious over the Shoggoth, but only just. First card up. Safeguard again. And if it bleeds. Oh, wow. You guys watched me shuffle the deck. So we're actually continuing here in that window. We're going to spend 2 resources to play 2 more events. First up, an evidence to discover a clue, just as I suspected. Then you'll grab a clue, and then he'll play if it bleeds. I believe the Shoggoth, yep, that's a monster enemy. So each investigator at your location heals horror equal to that enemy's horror value. It's a small comfort, but you'll take it. Which will heal him for two horror. That, unfortunately, though, is it for Nathaniel's turn, and Akachi's got a problem on her hands because now she needs to get away from this emerging deep one, so let's pay a visit to Akachi's play area. Action 1, Akachi needs to try to evade this emerging deep one. She's up 2, and I think that's where she'll test. +1 gets her away from the emerging deep one. Thankfully, well, it is a hunter. Action 2, she's going to spend 3 resources to parlay and remove the barrier away from the Innsmouth jail. And then action 3 will take us over to the map. Action 3, Akachi will move up to join Nathaniel at the Innsmouth jail, or at the Innsmouth square. That'll do it for Akachi, that'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, Akachi managed to give the emerging deep one the slip. So, we'll reset everything. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Both of our investigators will gain 1 resource and go to 2. Nathaniel will draw. Beat Cop, 4 cost to play, combat and commit. +1 combat, and as a fast action, discard Beat Cop to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. 2 and 2 on soak, and it takes the ally slot. Akachi draws. Ethereal Slip, 2 cost to play, will, agility on commit. Choose a non-elite enemy at a revealed location up to 2 connections away. Swap places with that enemy. Mythos phase, Doom on the agenda goes up to 3. We need 6 to advance, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that when we were going through it. Nathaniel draws. Rising Tides. Revelation, increase the flood level of the nearest location that can have its flood level increased. We saw this earlier. We'll increase the flood level of the Innsmouth Harbor, so that's fully flooded now. Akachi draws. Title alignment, oh joy. Peril, revelation, choose a location where there's at least 1 investigator. Increase that location's flood level. Each investigator at the chosen location takes 1 damage. If the chosen location's flood level is not increased by this effect, title alignment gains surge. We'll have to increase the flood level of the Innsmouth square, and each of our investigators will take 1 damage. Which will mean Nathaniel is now 1 damage away from being defeated by damage. So we're very much in trouble here, which means I'm going to try to get away from this emerging deep one if we can. But we're into the investigation phase, and let's move over to Nathaniel over at the map. Actions 1 and 2 for Nathaniel are going to be spent parlaying to move these 2 barriers over to in front of the Innsmouth jail. In action 3, he's going to move over to the First National Grocery. Someone has barricaded the entrance to the grocery store in the hopes that it might keep out the creatures prowling the streets. It won't, but it's a nice thought. Flips into Shroud of 3, 4 clues. Forced. After you enter this location from a connecting location, place 1 barrier between both locations. As an action, parlay. Test your lowest skill 2. If you succeed, remove 1 barrier between this location and a connecting location. Victory 1. So we'll get the 4 clues for that. And then that's it for Nathaniel. Akachi, Place one barrier between both locations. Alright, so we have a barrier back up between the Innsmouth Square. Akachi is going to use action 1 while she's at the Innsmouth Square to parlay and move that barrier. Then action 2, she's going to move it into the First National Grocery as well. We'll put another barrier up between First National Grocery and Innsmouth Square. Then action 3, she's going to spend a charge of clairvoyance to try to get a clue off the First National Grocery. So she's up 2. Do I have any will I want to commit? I have the Familiar Spirit. I'll commit that to go up 3. Tentacle touched. Wonderful. That will do it for Akachi. That'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, the emerging deep one moves. It can go after either investigator, and it looks for the shortest path not blocked by barriers. But since the path doesn't exist, it'll ignore barriers, and it'll move to the Gilman house. I don't think it really matters either way, because whether I send it to the Innsmouth Square or the the Gilman house, either way it's still the shortest. Actually, that's probably the way we want to do it, because we do need to consider not having barriers. So we'll do that. We'll reset everything, and then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Both of our investigators will gain a resource and go to 3. I'll do that for Akachi here. And then Nathaniel will draw. Emergency cash. Gain 3 resources, 0 cost to play. Akachi draws. Azure Flame. 3 cost to play, combat on commit. Uses 4 5 charges for Akachi. Action, spend a charge to fight, using will instead of combat and deal +1 damage. But if you pull a good symbol, take 1 damage. Let me just make sure we're fine on hand size. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All good there. Mythos phase, 4 Doom on the agenda. Nathaniel draws. Pulled back. Revelation, test will 3. If you fail, move to the connecting location to the east, ignoring all barriers. Then place each key you control on your location. Yikes. Nathaniel is base even. He's going to commit Safeguard to go up 1. Is there anything Akachi wants to give him? She'll give him she'll give him the Arcane Initiate to put him up 2, because I really don't want to fail this. I mean, failing isn't that bad, but failing isn't terribly bad here, because we can just parlay to get that barrier off the Innsmouth Square, but I'd rather not have to waste the action if I can avoid it. So Nathaniel is up 2. Tentacle touched, which means he's moving back to the Innsmouth Square, which is exactly what I did not want to have happen. And then Akachi will draw. Innsmouth Troublemaker, 432. Spawn, location with the most clues. Hunter. Action, place one of your clues on your location. Parlay. Exhaust Innsmouth Troublemaker. It does not ready during the next upkeep phase. This ability may be triggered by an investigator at a connecting location. Makes friends with Akachi, which is rather unfortunate. But that will do it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase now, and we're definitely going to need to exhaust that Troublemaker. So I think we're going to move over to Nathaniel, and we're going to move over to the map. Action 1, he's going to parlay to move this barrier between New Church Green and Innsmouth Square. Action 2, he's going to move over to the First National Grocery, which will place a barrier between, I believe it's that location. Yep. Okay, so Innsmouth Square and the First National Grocery. Then action 3, he's going to put a clue on the First National Grocery to exhaust the Innsmouth Troublemaker, which means it won't ready during this upkeep phase. That's it for Nathaniel. Akachi is going to work on trying to get clues off of this location. So for action 1, she's going to spend her last charge on her first clairvoyance to get a clue, to try to get 2 clues off the location. That's a Shroud of 3. She's up 2. +1 deals her another horror, but it will pull 2 clues off the location. That's a fast to do that? Yes. As a fast, we'll spend 3 clues to pull a barrier up from between the little bookshop and the Innsmouth, was that the First National Grocery. I'm going to need to have the emerging deep one engage Akachi, because Nathaniel can't take an attack from it. That was a fast. Alright, so action 2, she's going to take a resource. And action 3, she's going to play out a fresh copy of Clairvoyance. So we'll get the 4 charges out for that. And then that will do it for Akachi. That'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, the Innsmouth Troublemaker is exhausted. The emerging deep one, however, is not, so we'll have it engage Akachi. Our location's not flooded, so it doesn't attack Akachi from that clause, but it will attack Akachi from the normal attack, doing 1 and 1. Then that will do it for Akachi. That'll do it for the enemy phase. So now we'll wake everything up. And the Innsmouth Troublemaker is going to engage. I'm going to give it to Nathaniel with the plan of having him punch it down. So let's move back up top for the upkeep phase. Oh, no, actually the Innsmouth Troublemaker doesn't ready because we spent the clue there. Now we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Nathaniel will gain 1 resource and go to 4. Akachi will gain 1 resource. Nathaniel will draw. Fighting lessons. Combat agility, .mark on commit. Commit only to a skill test during an attack or evasion attempt. You can commit this skill to an investigator's test at any location. Akachi draws. Another Azure Flame, which we can't particularly play right now. Mythos phase, 5th Doom on the agenda. Nathaniel draws. Deep One Invasion, oh joy. Shuffle the encountered discard pile into the encounter deck. For each location to the east of your location on the same row, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until a Deep One enemy with the Hunter keyword is discarded and spawn that enemy at that location. Shuffle the discard pile. Okay, so for each location to the east, which will be 3, we're getting 3 Deep One enemies. So we shuffle this back in. Alright, so we're going to work from east to west. So for the Innsmouth Harbor, we need a deep one enemy with Hunter. Which that is not, but I'm not sorry to see those go. That is not, no, I know I showed, there we go. Emerging deep one, which Akachi has engaged on her, so that's at the Innsmouth Harbor. Moving over to the Full Fish Street Bridge. Not a deep one. Deep one assault, no. Dreams of Relay, no. Dreams of Relay, no. Undertow, no. Furtive Locals, no. Pulled back, no. Deep one assault, no. Lurking deep one. 224. Prey, no, that's not a hunter. Never mind. No. 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 Emerging deep one, but this one also on Akachi. Then at the Innsmouth Square. No. 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 No, shockingly. The deep one bull is not a hunter. No. 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 And no. So that means we stop this. So that means that card is fully resolved. And since Akachi is going to need to draw one as well, we reshuffle the deck immediately. Once I get everything lined up so I can shuffle it. There we are. Oh, I'm going to try to keep the cards all in the same direction. And Akachi will draw. Rising Tides. Increase the flood level of the nearest location that can have its flood level increased. We can increase the flood level on the... Right, on the First National Grocery. So now it's partially flooded. Okay, so we've got a big problem on our hands now. Nathaniel is 1 damage from defeated by being defeated by damage. And we've got an emerging deep one here that's going to probably start working on Akachi pretty soon. So, in the investigation phase, let's move over to Nathaniel and we'll move into his play area. Friendly fire is a thing in this game. Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of caring right now. So, I think action 1 is going to be to attack the emerging deep one off that's on Akachi. The reason I can't afford to care about friendly fire is because if Nathaniel engages the emerging deep one to try to avert friendly fire, then he's going to be defeated by damage on the emerging deep one's forced... Actually, he's going to be defeated on the... No, he's not going to be defeated on that, but... for some reason actually no, now he would be defeated because our location now is flooded, only partially, but still. Partially flooded is flooded enough for the emerging deep one to attack on engage. So, after that ramble, Nathaniel's going to attack the emerging deep one. He's up 3. Unfortunately, friendly fire would hit Akachi, but again, I don't have time to care. A well-loved 0 puts 1 damage on the emerging deep one. Action 2, we'll do it again. Skull. There's -1 for each location to the east of your location on the same row. Right now that's 3, and that brought us to 3, so we pass ties. The emerging deep one on Akachi is defeated, which will let me exhaust the boxing gloves to search the top 6 of my deck for a spirit event. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. First up, 1-2 punch, which is very tempting, and it's a spirit event, so I can take that. Next up, emergency cash, which I can't take. Then, if it bleeds, which I can't take. Next, hallowed mirror, which would be very good here, but I can't take that because it's not a spirit event. Next up, monster slayer, which I could take. And second wind. So we have some choices. First choice, we'll go in order that I found them, is 1-2 punch. 2 cost to play, combat on commit. Fight with +1 combat for the attack, and if you succeed, you may fight that enemy again. You get +2 damage and deal +1 damage, +2 combat and deal +1 damage for that attack. Next up is Monster Slayer. Fight, the attack deals +1 damage. And Second Wind. Play only as your first action. Heal 1 damage, 2 instead if you drew a Treachery this round, then draw 1 card. As much as I want to take a more offensive-oriented event, I think I have to take Second Wind here and hope that Nathaniel draws a Treachery this round. And maybe even if he doesn't... Actually, if he doesn't, I'm going to have to deal with the enemy that I draw from that. But we'll have to hope that he does draw... We'll have to hope that he does draw a Treachery this round that doesn't just defeat him by damage. And then for action 3, he'll draw a card while I've got the deck in my hand. So Nathaniel will draw another copy of Fighting Lessons. Not completely welcome, but also not complete trash either. That will do it for Nathaniel. Let's move over to Akachi's play area. Action 1 is going to be to use a charge of Clairvoyance to try to get 2 clues off the location. I want to try to keep that troublemaker locked down. Akachi's up 2. Elder Thing is yikes. This is a token I was afraid of coming out earlier. -X, where X is the number of barriers between your location and all connecting locations. I was more afraid of this coming out at Innsmouth Square, but right now it's a -2, so we actually do get the 2 clues off the location. One of which I'm going to put back on there for action 2 to exhaust the Innsmouth troublemaker and keep him locked down again. Then for action 3, we're going to spend another charge of Clairvoyance to try to get the last 2 clues off the location. So once again, we're up 2. Is there any will I'm going to commit to this test there? Nathaniel's only will is his heal card, Second Wind, and I'm not committing that here because I need that to heal. I think we're going to commit Ethereal Slip to put Akachi up 3. +1 is going to deal her another horror, so we do need to be careful on her sanity as well. But that will give Akachi the last 2 clues off the location, and then we'll spend 3 clues as a fast action after that to remove the barrier between the Innsmouth Grocery, First National Grocery, and the little bookshop. Then that will do it for Akachi. That'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, our 2 hunter enemies are going to be moving west. So the emerging deep one at the Fish Street Bridge moves to the Innsmouth Square. The one at the Innsmouth Harbor moves to the Fish Street Bridge. That will do it for the enemy phase. So everything now resets. The Innsmouth Troublemaker does not wake up. We'll reset everything here. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Nathaniel will gain 1 resource and go to 5. Akachi will gain 1 and go to 2. Nathaniel will draw. Monster Slayer, 0 cost to play, combat, or wildcard on commit. Fight, dealing +1 damage. Akachi will draw. Ward of Protection. We saw this earlier when we had to ward a very early, very dangerous Undertow. Mythos phase, we are advancing the agenda. Let's see what we've got here to deal with. Chased by deep ones, the tide creeps in as you make your way through the decrepit streets. You hear the blood-curdling cries of someone in agony up ahead. The moment you see the creatures patrolling the intersection, you hide in the broken-down doorway of a ruined building. Their unusual gait and croaking voices send shivers through your body. Even as the slapping of their webbed feet against the road fades into the distance, you cannot escape the feeling that, inevitably, they will find you. Increase the flood level of each coastal location. Shuffle each set-aside Ravager from the deep and young deep one enemy into the encounter deck along with the discard pile. Alright, so the Ravager from the deep and the young deep one. And those go in with the discard pile. Which wasn't much of a discard pile, but something to bear in mind. All right, that's all done. Now let's take a look at our new agenda. Agenda 2A, Relentless Tide. It had not seen me, but was simply obeying a general plan of cutting off my escape. This, however, implied that all roads leading out of Innsmouth were similarly patrolled. H.P. Lovecraft, The Shadow over Innsmouth. Same clause as before about suspect enemies, and your turn ends at a fully flooded location. Encounter cards, Nathaniel draws. Syzygy, oh joy, peril. You must decide, choose 1. Each investigator loses 3 resources, takes 2 horror, or place 1 doom on the current agenda. This effect can cause the current agenda to advance. Since we just advanced, and by the way, we need 5 doom for that, I'm going to put a doom on our new agenda. So now we're at 1 doom already. Akachi draws. Undertow. Our location is not unflooded. So we saw this earlier. I didn't hesitate to ward this. Well, I would say I didn't hesitate to ward this earlier. I definitely was a lot warmer to warding it earlier than I am now. Do I want to take a 2-2 tax right now would just defeat Akachi. That would give her a mental trauma, which I'm not completely in love with giving her a mental trauma on that one. I don't think I need to. So, I think I'm going to take the same reasoning I did earlier. It's going to cost me a card either way, so I'm going to ward this. I'm going to ward this Undertow as well, which will put her 1 sanity from defeated by sanity, but it's better that than the card just defeating her outright, so I think we're going to do it that way. That's into the investigation phase now, and we might want to get moving here. We're actually not that far away from completing the scenario. We only have to get rid of 1 more barrier if we move into the little bookshop. So I think in the investigation phase, Nathaniel will go first and will move over to the map. Moving over to the little bookshop would give us another option where we could come down here and try to grab the black key if we wanted to. But let's see what happens over at the little bookshop first. So for action 1, Nathaniel is going to move over to the little bookshop. Contrary to its name, the little bookshop has a vast collection of books. You might find a valuable tome by perusing its shelves. This flips into Shroud of 3, 1 clue. 2 actions, and draw the top card of the encounter deck, Parlay. Remove 1 barrier between this location and a connecting location. Reaction, if the investigators control 5 or more keys as a group, Parlay. Read flashback 6 in the campaign guide. Well, we're not controlling 5 or more keys in a million years. So I think for action 2, Nathaniel will move down to Sawbone Alley, which was our hideout if you remember. Sawbone Alley is not for the faint of heart, but if you think you know the town's secrets, fortune favors the bold. Favors the bold. This will flip into Shroud of 4, 4 clues. Parlay test will, 1 per investigator, so 2. If you succeed, remove 1 barrier between this location and a connecting location. Fast action, if the investigators control 7 keys as a group, Parlay. Read flashback 7 in the campaign guide. The only way we're controlling, and victory 1. The only way we're controlling 7 keys as a group is in my dreams, considering we haven't found 5 of them yet, and we got off to pretty much a very attack-heavy start with pulling the Innsmouth Shoggoth way early in the scenario. Action 3, I think Nathaniel will spend 4 resources and play out his buddy the Beat Cop for another +1 combat, and discard the Beat Cop as a fast action to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. 2 and 2. So now we've got a little bit of soak before Nathaniel bites the dust. That will do it for Nathaniel's turn. Akachi is going to move action 1 to the little bookshop, 2 to Sawbone Alley, and 3 we're going to start working on these clues. That's a Shroud of 4. She's up 1. Do we have Will in her hand that we want to use? How about in Nathaniel's? Oh, I was going to play Second Wind this turn, but we kind of got away with one. We kind of got away with it there. Whoops. But now we got some soak, so Nathaniel is actually okay for the time being. We're just going to test up 1. A 0 is going to mean Akachi is going to take a horror and be defeated by mental trauma. She'll drop the white key at the Sawbone Alley along with her remaining clue. It was a risk worth taking, but I forgot about the clause on clairvoyance. So that'll actually do it for Akachi. That'll do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, the emerging deep one moves to the First National Grocery. The emerging deep one is going to move to Innsmouth Square. Then we'll reset everything for Nathaniel. And then we're going to move back up top for the upkeep phase. Nathaniel will gain 1 resource, going up to 2, and then he'll draw another pair of boxing gloves that he doesn't need. Mythos phase, second doom on the agenda, and then Nathaniel will draw Inundated. Revelation, to place 1 barrier between this location and each connecting location with no barriers between them. If no barriers are placed this way, Inundated gains Surge. The Innsmouth troublemaker should be awake, by the way. Then we'll place a barrier between Sawbone Alley and the little bookshop. The only way Nathaniel's getting out of this scenario is in my dreams. So, looking at this, we could have the beat cop. That's a Shroud of 4, and he's got exactly no clue gathering in his hand. Second wind would only delay the inevitable by a turn. I'm going to turn off the camera, but I'm going to continue my brainstorming here. And I need to change my battery. Here's the situation I find myself in. Nathaniel right now is barricaded in the Sawbone Alley. Shroud of 4 with a lore of 2, and his deck is pretty terrible at gathering clues. He tends to beat his clues out of his enemies, but he's got to beat 3 clues. He's basically got to beat a total of 6 clues out of his enemies, and I've already played one of his evidences. Right? Yes, I've already played one of them. So I did boost his clue gathering abilities when I did upgrades. I'm honestly looking at this, and my thought process right now is there's really no point to continuing this scenario, because eventually what's going to happen is the treacheries are probably just going to keep going with this. But because the problem is we can't get those clues off the location in a million years, not when he's testing base down 2, and even the Elder Sign or the +1 would only bring us down 1, so we can't get those clues off the location. Basically, we're just waiting for the inevitable to happen at this point, where Nathaniel's going to end up getting swarmed by deep ones, and 2 more treachery cards are probably going to come out. But, well, 2 more treachery cards, at least 2 more cards are coming out. Question is, do I want to play it out, or do I just want to call it here, since I am very much seeing the writing on the wall. But, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to play it out here. So, let's move down. Where do we want to move to with Nathaniel? I think we're going to move to the... There's really... You know what? No. Since I'm seeing the writing on the wall here and I'm kind of hemming and hawing over this, I'm not going to play this out. Since I know the biggest problem is those clues and I can't get those off. So, I think instead, we're going to say that Nathaniel is eventually going to suffer enough damage to take a... Let's see what the next 2 encounter cards would have been. That'll help me determine what kind of trauma he's suffering. So the next encounter card would be Inundated, which would surge into a Ravager from the Deep. And we'd be placing... Well, the barrier would basically not do anything. And yeah, we would... Let's see, the next encounter card would be a Deep 1 Assault. Okay, so... Right, I'm calling it that we'd be seeing the writing on the wall here. So, with that, we're going to move into scenario resolution. We're all set for scenario resolution, so, Phoenix from the past, take it away.
If no resolution was reached because each investigator was defeated, your flight from Innsmouth is fraught with peril. Nowhere is safe. Horrific creatures patrol every street, their unblinking eyes scanning for any sign of human life. The eerie silence is punctuated only by the occasional screams of those unfortunate enough to be caught by the foul things. You move through the city as quickly as you can, but they close in all around you, following your every move. Soon, if you do not find a place to hide, they will catch you. And when they do, your cries of agony will surely join with the others. You are out of options. You break into the nearest building, a sinking ramshackle residence, and hide. You hear the telltale schlick of wet footsteps outside the house. Seconds turn to minutes, minutes to hours. The sun sets, bathing the sky outside in a deep scarlet hue. Bit by bit, the light fades. Under cover of darkness, you make your move. The flood is so bad now that it's a wonder you can even trudge through to the other side of the city. But somehow, you do. With the railway station in sight, you break into a run. Proceed to Resolution 1.
All right.
Resolution 1. You rush to safety, elated to be free of this hellish ordeal. But as you rush the vehicles, uncertainty swims in your mind. When you turn to face Agent Harper, she instantly recognizes your expression. You understand now that you were hired to rescue her, and that something went awry. You and Agent Dawson were captured, and he was sacrificed to that thing in the tidal caverns. Now you and Agent Harper are safe and free to return to Boston. And yet, we can't just leave, Harper says aloud what you are thinking. Her brows are knit in frustration. I mean, look at all this. This devastation. These creatures. She motions to what remains of the flooded town of Innsmouth. We have to figure out what's really going on here, or she trails off. You understand her meaning. If the tide is rising this quickly here, it could be happening all along the eastern seaboard. Arkham, Boston, no city is safe. Worse yet, nobody would believe such tall tale until it was too late. Whatever those creatures are, they're scheming something that could put the entire world in jeopardy. You cannot allow that to happen. I don't suppose you have Dawson's key, do you? Harper asks. You can't imagine you would, yet when you check your belongings, you find a polished silver key is among them. Dawson must have given it to you before his untimely end. You try the key on the driver's side door of his automobile, and it turns with an audible click. Well, would you look at that? Eager to be away, she starts her car. At the engine's shuddering ignition, your mind reels with sudden pain. A bright spot, like the incandescent sun, flares within your sight. Okay, so where to now? She asks, but you're barely able to register her words. The blinding flare grows larger and brighter. The rumbling of the engine drowns out all other sound. The world spins. You fall to the ground, clutching your temples. Your entire head is on fire. You can hear Harper calling to you, but her voice is muffled, like she's deep underwater. Or perhaps you are. Your vision fades. All that is left is the roaring of the engine and the crashing of the tumultuous sea waves. And then each investigator earns experience equal to the Victory X value of each card in the Victory display. Record this experience under Unspent Experience in your campaign log, but do not spend any of it yet. You will be instructed to spend this experience at a later time. Check campaign log. If the investigators made it safely to their vehicles, each investigator records 2 additional experience under Unspent Experience. Proceed to Scenario 4, Devil Reef.
For completeness sake, we're going to go through everything. So 1 for the Shuggoth, a 2nd for the First National Grocery, 3rd for the Innsmouth Jail. So we did pick up 3 experience. But the physical trauma that both, actually, I think Akachi's was mental. Right, Akachi's was mental and Nathaniel's was physical. So Nathaniel picked up his 3rd trauma, and I think even before that happened, I knew I was invoking the house rule and calling the campaign over. So the winter campaign is going to be over. Later this afternoon, I'm expecting to have the campaign outro for this campaign, which means we'll be playing something else next week. I haven't decided what yet, but I will have decided by the time we get to Wednesday and Mag 23, Guadalcanal from Historic Wings starts recording. As for Mystical Munchies, Saturday we're cooking the last recipe out of the Cooking with Deadpool cookbook as we make the dessert chimney. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.